Welcome back to FM Builds. My name is Mike Usry, and this is a series about Project Run, this NB Miata that we're taking from stock to swole. In this episode, we're going to be upgrading the cooling system to keep it cool as a cucumber. So let's go ahead and talk about the parts that we're going to install in this video. Here in front of me are a smorgasbord of cooling upgrades. And let's go ahead and talk about the shiniest thing on the table, our Crossflow Radiator. This is built for us by Koyorad, who are a sponsor of this series. So thank you very much, Koyorad, for sending out this radiator to use in Project Run. As mentioned, it's a crossflow radiator, meaning that the fluid travels horizontally through the radiator rather than from the top down to the bottom, meaning that that fluid actually spends more time in the radiator and is able to get cooled off more efficiently than a standard upright style radiator. It's also an all aluminum construction radiator, meaning that this is a better reliability and long-term upgrade compared to the stock radiators that have plastic end caps. So this is going to do a lot of good keeping Project Run nice and chilly. Along with that, a good pairing is our Stage 2 airflow kit. So this is our fan and shroud combo. This is a SPAL brushless fan, and it uses a PWM control, meaning that it actually can spin as fast or as slow as necessary to keep up with the cooling demands of the car. It is controlled by what we call the brain. It's a smart sensor, essentially, that we're going to be threading into this hose splice in the upper radiator hose. And this basically tells that fan how fast it needs to spin to be able to keep up with however much heat the engine is producing. Besides the meat and potatoes of a cooling system, we do need to upgrade some of the auxiliary components as well, which includes a new radiator cap. This is our FM 16 PSI radiator cap. It features silicone seals, which are going to last a lot longer than the factory or even aftermarket rubber seals that tend to get cracked and worn out. And we have some brackets that are specifically for NB Miatas to be able to mount this Crossflow radiator to the radiator core supports in the NB chassis. We also have a new Coolant Overflow tank. This is a all aluminum construction. You might see a trend here, trying to get everything updated and get rid of any of the plastic components that tend to fail because they get worn out, cracked, broken, that kind of stuff over time. This also features a sight glass, so even though it is all aluminum, we can still see if there's coolant in there or not and what the level is. Very tidy upgrade. And of course, our cooling system upgrade wouldn't be complete if we didn't also factor in our cooling reroute kit. So the reroute actually moves the thermostat to the back of the engine rather than the front, so that way the flow through the engine is a bit more complete. You're actually getting coverage across all 4 cylinders. That way we can maintain consistent coolant temperatures from the front to the back of the engine. This is important for longevity, but also it does feature some auxiliary ports on here that we can use for cooling possible turbochargers in the future. So this is a good upgrade to factor in at the same time as all of this. Of course, we are also going to be replacing all of the factory hoses that are on there that are 20 plus years old at this point. So we have a new FM lower radiator hose. We have the upper radiator hose for the coolant reroute, of course. And then we have tons of factory Mazda coolant hoses for all of the little auxiliary hoses and heater core hoses that it just makes sense. Get the factory stuff because it works really well. So with all of this installed in the car, we're going to have a brand new cooling system, and it's going to be relatively bulletproof for any future track time down the road and just for long-term reliability in general for many years to come. Now that we've talked about the parts, let's go ahead and get them installed in the car. Before we start bolting on shiny new parts, we need to remove some of the factory equipment. So out comes the radiator and the fans along with their associated wiring. We also need to tilt the AC condenser forward just a little bit at the top to give us some more room for that larger Crossflow radiator. Before we can drop in the new Crossflow radiator and airflow kit, we need to assemble them together because the whole assembly will drop in all as one. Ethan unbolts the front sway bar and drops it down to give us a little bit of room. Once the new radiator and fan kit has been offered up to the car, they need to be attached with brackets at the top to retain the radiator. The new SPAL fan setup is a brushless motor, so it does require a few more wires to make sure that it runs properly. Ethan gets started with the wiring by adding a relay and running wiring directly from the alternator to ensure that we have good power supply to the new, more powerful SPAL fan. And of course, all electricity on DC vehicles needs a ground, so that's up next. To ensure that the routing is correct, Ethan mocks up the new upper radiator hose, which will connect the back of the engine to the radiator inlet. The new powerful SPAL brushless fan requires a PWM, or pulse width modulation, input from a smart sensor. This smart sensor is located in a hose splice that is going to be located in the upper radiator hose. And to top it off, our new Crossflow radiator is capped with a Flyin Miata radiator cap. This features a silicone seal for much longer and more reliable service life. We're refreshing all of Ron's cooling system, so a new FM lower radiator hose is installed. This new piece is fully silicone and features an extra couple of bends, and that will give us a bit more clearance for upcoming horsepower in the next episode. The easiest step in this coolant system upgrade is to remove the factory plastic overflow tank and install the Flyin Miata aluminum coolant overflow tank. We also use a new silicone overflow hose from the radiator to replace the crusty factory rubber hose. We want the front of this engine to look as clean and tidy as possible, so we're removing the entire thermostat neck and using a block-up plate included with the kit to seal off the port that is left open. And now we turn our attention to the back of the engine bay, where Matt removes the factory heater core hoses. Before the new coolant reroute housing is bolted into place, Matt loads in a new thermostat and threads in the hose barb for the heater core feed. The smaller auxiliary ports are blocked off for now since they won't be used just yet. This next part helps if you're fluent in Braille, although it's not required, and Matt gets the coolant reroute housing bolted into place on the backside of the engine, mostly by feel. And to wrap up the coolant reroute install, new heater core hoses are installed, as well as the upper radiator hose that we just saw attached to the radiator earlier in the episode. The very last step after all the new parts have been installed is to fill it up with coolant and then bleed out all the air bubbles. We use a spill-free funnel here, and that makes the job a lot easier. I don't know if you can tell, but this engine bay is looking pretty cool. Oh, but really, all the shiny parts in here do actually make a difference in keeping this engine nice and controlled when we start adding more power. Hint, hint. New Crossflow radiator, stage 2 airflow kit with the brain, our reroute kit, new overflow tank. We even have a cowl panel so that way we can keep everything looking good, keeping all the airflow where it's supposed to be. This car is now ready for the next big step. And that is, of course, boost. Of course, we wouldn't be able to have this build series without the help of our friends and sponsors, Moss Miata, DEI, Willwood Brakes, Cypher Auto, Hard Dog Fabrication, Koyo Radiators, and Toyo Tires. Thank you all very much for your support and lending parts to be able to make this build as exhilarating as possible. I'd also like to extend a thank you to our customers and all of our friends in the Miata community. Thank you all very much for your support. So, if you liked this video, thank you very much for watching. But of course, if you'd like to know whenever the next video comes out, be sure to hit like, subscribe, the notification bell, that kind of thing. So that way, when we finally get some real horsepower in this car, you'll be able to see it as soon as it comes out. Thanks again for joining. We sure appreciate it. And we will see you all in the next one.